You're listening to the Break Podcast powered by Career Cloud.
I got recruited to go play basketball in the Philippines. I got offered contracts. I was so spoiled. I never had to put myself out there other than my work will speak for itself and then we'll see what you guys offer. I don't understand the job market in the world. I don't understand the job market in the US. I don't know how hiring practice. I literally know nothing. When we hire people, we do not try to find someone who fits and checks every box. That's not how this works. That person doesn't exist. It's like a wish list for us. And we try to get interviews and find somebody who can learn some of the things that we're looking for. He's like, your resume's great. You'll be good. Resume's great. What? Yelling at guys to play defense? Where's that? That's not a job listing. It was really helpful having some friends speak to me and coach me through this stuff.
This episode is sponsored by ZipRecruiter. If you need a change and are looking for a new job, or if you're looking to hire for your small business, please check out ZipRecruiter today. Their smart technology matches the right candidates to the right jobs and sends new opportunities right to your inbox. They make finding a job or hiring the right person easier than ever. ZipRecruiter, the smarter way to hire. Try ZipRecruiter for free today by going to ZipRecruiter.com and tell them I sent you. Alex, welcome to the show. So glad to have you today and to bring you and your talents and your enthusiasm to our audience. How are you?
Great, Mike. Thanks. Glad to be here, man. Excited to hang out with you and chat a bit about whatever you want to talk about.
Yeah. I mean, it's so funny that there's people in your life that you meet, right? And you have, you think you know their story. And then when you get to know them a little bit more, you realize there's a lot more to it. And I feel like that was my interactions with you. So I knew of you, I should say, as a basketball player, basketball nut, went to the Philippines and did all this amazing stuff there. And I just thought you decided to sort of move your family back to the States and, write the next chapter of your life. And that is not exactly how it turned out. So we're going to dig in here. And folks, just so you know, I think this is the first person I've had on who actually has their own Wikipedia page. Like, that's how big a deal Alex is. And we're going to get to all of that. But where I want to start with this conversation is talk to me about 2020 and the pandemic and what happened and what was going on with you and your family. And that's just where I want to start.
Yeah, well, the whole world was shook up, so we weren't exempt from that. And basically, I was living in Manila. We were living in Manila. I'd been living there since 1998. I had an offer on the table to be an assistant coach with the national team in a full-time capacity in basketball. So I was a basketball coach. And people don't know this. The Philippines is one of 4 countries in the world where basketball is the number one sport. So, I'd gone there, I thought, for a year or two to play and then go to grad school. So, of course, I was there 22 straight years and was coaching. And I said, I know whatever happens, whenever I'm done playing, I'll never coach. So, of course, I had been coaching for 12 years at that point. So you never know where life's going to bring you. But the lockdowns hit. And so we had never considered moving. Met my wife in Manila. She's Filipino Irish, but she had grown up in the Philippines. We met in the Philippines. Life was there, friends, professional life. I mean, if you think about when you were 23 years old out of college, if you were in one spot for 22 years, that's a sweet spot. And life was good. We loved it. All my kids were born there. But the lockdowns were so strict that our kids couldn't go outside of our condo unit, not the condo building. They couldn't go into the hallway. And we had gotten the condo because there were some nice amenities and stuff that would let kids be kids in the midst of a big city. And they couldn't use them.
And give us a little bit of context around like the density of Manila, the population, just so people, because most of our audience is in the US, they may not have any real context. Show us what that's like.
Well, so Madison, where we live, Madison, Wisconsin's about 290,000 people, and spread out a bit. Greater Metro Manila, the area, the place that feels like it's all one contiguous city, if you will. That's about 23 million people. And it's always interesting in highly populated areas, you notice that personal space is like divided by two, right? Everybody's just closer. So Manila is a very crowded place. And so all the lockdown stuff, nobody knew what we were dealing with. Nobody knew exactly what we were dealing with. People were just trying to be careful. And so the lockdowns were really strict because if stuff was radically contagious and deadly, you could have some horrible things happen. So it was really strict. But my folks live in Madison. And so I told my wife, I said, babe, this is going to get old real quick. Our kids were 8, 6, and 4 years old. And they did a great job. We're really proud of them. We found things to do in a condo, but a condo's only going to last so long, right? You're living in this little box and you have to be creative. So we decided to come visit my folks in Madison, Wisconsin. The only reason that we could actually leave is that my wife is also an Irish citizen. So it was at that point, only foreigners could leave the Philippines. So I'm an American. My kids are Filipino Americans, but they had U.S. passports, and my wife is Filipino Irish. So she had an Irish passport. So we would have never left without her. So thank God she's part Irish. So we got on a plane. I said, hey, baby, we go visit my folks. Just spend a couple months, have grandma and grandpa time out in Madison. We live so far away. And even if we can't be around other people, the kids can go outside. They can climb trees. They can play tag and, just be kids. And so I said, yeah, just 2 months. She goes, no, let's make it 3 months. Let's have some fun. Okay, great. Yeah, Madison's beautiful. We'll love it. The kids will have a great time. And then we got stuck. And it's kind of funny. We couldn't get back. And the league was shut down. So I coached in the pro league and then was going to be with the national team and had offers in the pro league and was just, anyways, but there was nothing to do. And so we each had a suitcase of summer clothes, spring and summer clothes. And my wife and I got to a point, we looked at each other and said, okay, I guess we're moving here. Sure. Oh, wow. We don't have like forks or work, or if this goes into winter, like any winter stuff, like everything's in Manila. So we decided to move there. And, when COVID was at its, most stringent, when everybody's trying to figure stuff out in 2020, there was really nothing to do. It wasn't like, go apply here, go do this. So we were just forced to have quality, multi-generational family time with my folks that my wife and I have never intentionally given a better gift to our kids than the oops gift of we're stuck here with grandma and grandpa for 16 months.
Yeah.
And so now my kids really know my parents. They really know and love each other. And they really know each other where they can also annoy each other. Like real relationship, not like, oh, you're cute, I'll just look past that. Like real relationship. So that part was really cool.
So how did you, what were you thinking about in terms of your career? I'm gonna rewind into some of your more formative years, but I'm really curious in this particular point in time. I mean, this is basketball. You've been doing it for 22 years. You eat, slept, breathe this sport. It's what you loved, and you were going to continue coaching there. And now you're moving a world away. What was going through your mind career-wise, like as a provider, as like someone who still has to earn money at some point? What was that like?
So we had a little cushion. It wasn't a big cushion. We had a little cushion. And my thing had been, I had talked to some people I knew in basketball when I was in the Philippines early on. A guy named Phil Martelli, he was head coach at St. Joe's. He recruited me out of high school. Great guy. He was Juwan Howard's lead at Michigan for a while. Great guy and just a great resource. Always been really good to me. I talked to him. I talked to Tony Bennett. I have a good friend, Ed Schilling, who's the head coach now at Pepperdine. I talk to him all the time. But every single one of those guys, and a couple other guys that I spoke to, had said some version of this statement. I love being in the game. I hate how much I'm away from my family. And for me, especially in the last 5 years before we came here, having been a head coach, it was hard to be mentally present while trying to figure out essentially what I would say how to punch up in weight classes a little bit
Yeah.
and play the giant and still be present with my kids and try to, be a leader and win each possession. I mean, really in the Philippines, we're kind of year round. There's 3 seasons in a year and there's very small breaks in between. So you don't stop. So I didn't want to be on the road. I mean, I wanted to be at Little League. I've seen you at Little League actually,
Yeah.
right? And I just wanted to be present, man. I just it's such a cool age. My kids are, I'm sure everybody feels this about their kids, but my kids are so cool and it's such a cool age and it's fun and you want to watch them and go through it and be there for them. I didn't want to be out on the road. I wasn't going to be like the head coach of Duke or something. No one's going to hire me. I would have had to start out as an assistant coach somewhere. And I don't want to be on the road recruiting kids that 95%, 98% will never play for me and miss my own kids' time in that. So I didn't want to go into basketball in the US. I just said,
but that was something you were already thinking about pre coming to the United States. Is that correct? It wasn't like, an epiphany moment. Like you had already been thinking about it? Okay.
The really cool thing in the Philippines for me was that all the games were played in Manila. Most of our games were played where the Tula in Manila was fought. Ali Fraser, it's cool arenas, but you weren't flying somewhere. Like almost all your games were there. So I just didn't want to be gone.
That makes a ton of sense. Okay. All right. So I want to go back, take me back to your formative years. When did you really start to feel like you had something special in the game of basketball? Because basketball is such a part of your story, and I'm just really curious of how you realized that and what that kind of ended up putting on the table for you.
So probably late elementary school going into middle school. So maybe 5th grade, 6th grade. I started to do pretty well I'm a guard, so you can't tell by sitting down, but I am not tall. I'm praying that I'll get to 5'11" one day. So 5'10". But I started doing pretty well, but I was never overly physically dominant, right? I wasn't that that Tyreek Hill type where you're like, oh my gosh, who was that? That was so fast. But I just loved playing. Just really loved playing. And I was living in Ithaca, New York, when that was happening. My dad was working at Cornell University. My mom was working there in college. And it was just playing a lot. And it became, for me, more than anything, it really became just a passion. I'm a pretty happy-go-lucky guy. I just like life, and I never talk trash playing basketball because I really care about it. But for playing any other sport with friends, I'll needle them and talk some trash because I don't care. I'm not hyper competitive, but I have fun, And so as that was going on, it started to be I'm on this travel team with friends in Ithaca. We were pretty good, but I didn't overly stand out. And came to Madison. Started playing. It came to Madison. Started at high school West here, Madison West, and my freshman coach helped change my shot. I was a pass first point guard, and I went from a okay shooter to being a pretty good shooter, and that really impacted the way I played and my ability and options. But I just played all the time, Mike. I just loved it. It was when you probably see this with other families and kids, my parents would be yelling, come inside, it's 10 o'clock. You're going to keep the numbers. Okay, just one more shot. 10 minutes later, get inside now. That's I just love playing. I wanted to be doing it.
Was there a moment you can remember from back in that middle school years where it clicked with you? This is something I love that I could always do.
It's interesting because I'm right in the middle of writing a book on sports parenting. So thinking about my own motivations and how it started, one of them was probably in 6th grade at the Syracuse basketball camp. I won the MVP in my age group, and that was pretty cool to me, right? You're 12, you don't know what you're doing. You're 12. And all of a sudden I'm there and I'm watching this guy, Derek Coleman, and he's his elbows are up above the rim. And he's they were the cool guys for me. That Syracuse is an hour away from Ithaca. So getting that fed into that passion even more because it was I really love this thing. And, I guess I'm pretty good at it. And that made me want to play more. It was that external motivation feeding into the internal one. Yeah. And I think that might've been a start.
Yeah, that's great. I love the idea of moments. Like I always ask people that, like if I in a conversation, just what, like was there a specific moment? And can I give you mine just from
Sure.
baseball?
Yeah,
Just
I
a
would love to
corollary.
hear. Yeah.
So, I'm left-handed and I'm small and I was fast, and so I wanted to always play first base, and because I was left-handed, and then you get to a point where you realize, oh, they got to put the big kids that are power hitters that can't really move. They got to put them at first base, even if they're right-handed. So Mike, we're going to throw you in the outfield. All right, cool. Fine. I go do that. And like, I don't remember what age, but I middle of a game, ball gets hit. I'm running after the ball, diving catch, robbing some kid of a hit and as I get up, he's rounding rounding first, going to second, thinks he's got a double. And I come up with the ball, and it was just like I took the guy's soul, and that was the moment for me. I was like, oh my God, like this is fun. Like that is really fun. So you can take those and you can think about moments that click in career as well. But those sports moments where you're just like a kid, you're like, oh yeah, I think I can do this. Like I want to keep doing this. Those are like just the best things to tap into. It's so much fun.
So speaking of that, I actually had a moment, but reflecting back, that I had forgotten about years ago. And I remember that in an interview like this, someone was asking me about something, and I remembered. I think I was still playing. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm living that statement I made when I was either 10 or 11 years old. That's crazy. And that was, and I'm not trying to jump ahead on the timeline of questions or anything, but so my parents always worked in and around universities, so they took a sabbatical, and they had met in Thailand in the Peace Corps, and so we went back to Northeast Thailand for a year. And so I was 10 or 11, but I remember you remember the old like Maxwell House cans or Folgers cans? I think it was Maxwell House that we had. So we're in Thailand, and we got a little driveway and then a carport, just a roof over a place to park your head. But there's a board above the carport that we nailed in and cut out the bottom of a Maxwell House can, and we would shoot hoops with a tennis ball on it. And that was kind of our, my brother and I, my brother's 5 years older, we'd play on it. And we're out there. And I remember thinking, I don't know if you have an older brother, but mine was 5 years older. So he was like the biggest, strongest guy I knew. He was so cool because he's 5 years older, and I could never win a fight or an argument. And so he was, he was up on me and everything. And so I was like, hey man, think you're going to play Division I? You can do this? He said, no, I think I'll, probably end up playing D3. Okay. I said, well, my goal is I want to be good enough to play in an Ivy League school and good enough to play pro ball overseas. And it was a really interesting thing to say as a kid. Like I never dreamed of the NBA, which is good because I wouldn't have gotten that dream. But I actually made that statement as some kid in Northeast Thailand, some little white kid, like, yeah, I want to be good enough to play in Ivy League school. And I lived out that thing. But it wasn't like that conscious, put it on my billboard, carry it around with me. It was a statement I made and forgot.
Yeah.
And then when I realized, oh my gosh, I'm playing pro ball in the Philippines, I got to live that thing I said. Yeah. That's crazy. It was really cool.
I got goosebumps when you started talking about that. Like that's the stuff that just gets me. That's amazing. So you mentioned your parents growing up around university, sabbatical in Thailand, but you were actually born in the Philippines. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah.
Both of your parents are American. Is that right?
They're both Americans. Mom's from the Twin Cities. Dad's a coal miner's son from West Virginia and Ohio.
So how did that work? Were they? Yeah, just give me the story. Get a little background there.
Sure. I'm not like a standard Midwestern kid who grew up in this town and then went to high school and then to college and then after college, they met in the Peace Corps in Thailand. And then both went back to graduate school in the US, and they did something like the Peace Corps in Laos, a smaller country in Southeast Asia, north of Thailand, northeast, I guess you would say. My geography is terrible, so forgive me. And then they did 2 years there, and they went back and got their PhDs. And my dad's first job after getting his PhD from Michigan was at the IIRR, anyways, an Institute of Rural Reconstruction in Cavite in the Philippines. And my mom was back and forth between the Philippines and Laos because she's a linguist, and she was doing her dissertation work on some stuff in Laos. And so she was back and forth. and I ended up being born in the Philippines. But we left when I was 6 months old because my dad took a job at North Carolina State University. So we moved. So I don't have any memories. I mean, I was a baby when we left.
But it's some level, that story of being born in some distant foreign land and this sabbatical in Thailand made you say, I want to play basketball, not in the NBA, but I want to play basketball overseas. Is that correct? Or was there anything else that you think got into your consciousness there?
Yeah, so we just really weren't kind of a normal family. So, and I don't mean that in a critical way, but we're like, I always joke around and tell people, like, I'm the whitest Asian dude you're gonna meet. Like, I was born in the Philippines, lived in Thailand, half my life was in the Philippines. Yeah. Speak Tagalog. I used to speak Thai. I just now know how to order good food now. But yeah, so growing up, my mom spoke and taught Thai and Lao. And worked at the Southeast Asia Center at Cornell University. And my dad did development work predominantly in Asia and some in Africa. So when we would have parties at our house, it would be like us and maybe one other white family, and then a bunch of Southeast Asians and some Africans. Probably 2/3, 3/4 Southeast Asians, some Africans, and then us and maybe one other family, one other white family. So I just kind of grew up around tons of international people with different accents, who spoke different languages, who looked different, and was right at home in that. And then when we went to Thailand, it was just like, it was such an eye-opening experience for me as a young kid that I was like, yeah, it'd be really cool. Like, travel is cool. It's fun. We travel as a family. Like, it'd be cool to play pro ball overseas somewhere. And I honestly think in my mind, I remember thinking about Yale and Spain. And I think I went to Cornell in the Philippines, so we'll take it.
That's awesome. That's great. Great story. Yeah, I just picture you being the whitest Asian dude around. That's so funny.
You're listening to the Break Podcast, powered by Career Cloud.
This episode is sponsored by ZipRecruiter. If you need a change and are looking for a new job, or if you're looking to hire for your small business, please check out ZipRecruiter today. Their smart technology matches the right candidates to the right jobs and sends new opportunities right to your inbox. They make finding a job or hiring the right person easier than ever. ZipRecruiter, the smarter way to hire. Try ZipRecruiter for free today by going to ZipRecruiter.com and tell them I sent you.
Having basketball as such a piece of your life, then being overseas and you guys thought you were going to be there forever. And coming back to the States where you spent a lot of time and you have a lot of connections and all of that. But with this whole new perspective from the pandemic with your family, what was the thought process? What was going through your mind in terms of figuring out like that next chapter? Letting go of that game, maybe. I'm sure there was some stuff there. But take that question kind of however you want. I want to bring that out because it's really important to our audience to understand like how different people deal with change, how we think through these big changes in our lives.
Yeah. I wish I could say it was super easy.
Never is.
You're right. And I just shifted hemispheres and decided to leave careers in the one thing that I ever loved. So there was a whole lot of identity wrestling in that, because I got compliments and ego strokes and feedback and participated in and loved and worked and was in and around basketball my whole life. It was my thing. It was my thing. But when I had kids, it was definitely secondary to my wife and kids. And, sometimes obviously the work would be, I'm not sleeping in the room tonight because I'm watching film till 3 a.m. and we got to get up at 6. But most of the time, it was always about them. So for me, honestly, fundamentally at the core of this whole process was my faith, which became really important to me. I didn't grow up with, I didn't think about, it was never a thing for me. It just wasn't a thing. I didn't think in that way. It was never a thing. I ended up becoming a Christian in the Philippines, and just at my core belief, just being honest about this process, is that in spite of my flaws and weaknesses and mistakes I make on the court, off the court, whatever, in life, what at my core belief was, wow, God's really good and he loves me in spite of that. And he has good things for me. And I don't always feel that way. I might have doubt and insecurities. I might feel bad. And I had a lot of those challenges or doubts or insecurities, but I was able to bounce off of that faith and go, okay, it's hard right now. What's next? Like, I believe that there's going to be something good in this. I just don't know what to do or where to go. And I felt capable in my capacity, but the world's shut down. How do you apply for a job when the world's shut down? What job do you apply for? And frankly, I don't know if you've ever had to go through this, Mike, but it was amazing. I always did well in school, and I have really successful friends who've just done some really cool stuff, whether they're friends from high school or friends from college. And I knew I had connections, but when you shift hemispheres and shift careers, go look at a bunch of job postings, and it can be extremely intimidating and discouraging because you're like, nope, don't have that, don't have that, don't have that, don't have that, don't. Where am I going to work? What am I going to do when this all works out? And it was a real challenge. It was a real challenge. And I don't know what it would have been like without that faith and belief that, that God's good and he loves me in spite of my weakness. And I'm going to get through this. There's no way that I'll ever know what that would have been like, but I'm grateful that I had that so that my lows didn't get too low. And from that, it was really cool. I actually got offered a job. Here's the crazy thing. I got offered a job to be a CEO of a small startup company. I'm like, perfect. I never took a business class, accounting, finance. Yeah, it's right up my alley. Let's do it. So it did work out. It did work out. It was a blessing. I got to learn a lot of stuff, and I kind of got thrown into the fire with some wonderful people that I absolutely love to this day. But I got to take my swing at that, and it was really fun. But that transition time was that hard.
Yeah. So there's a couple of threads I want to pull on here. Number one is, you hear all the time. So I deal primarily with people who have done something for a long time that they don't just love. It's not their passion. And then they realize that they're stuck and that they want more out of life. Like, that's generally who I end up working with and talking to. You, on the other hand, got to spend this whole lifetime like in your passion. Like, you had a very big passion for basketball and the game, and whether it's playing or coaching, you just wanted to be around it. You loved it. It was a passion of yours. And this is where I say that the advice people get about go for your passion it's bad advice, because your passion can fuel your drive in something, but things change all the time. Like, you had to go from a single passion to something more. And I define that more as purpose. Like you had to go more encompassing, something bigger than your passion for this game, because your passion for the game wasn't going to fulfill all the other things that in your life that got bigger, your family, your kids, the relationships you wanted to have. So you had to go outside of that. And that's scary. So people get identity from all sorts of different things. Number one, like, okay, you got identity from basketball and the game, and you were so immersed in it. Other people are given an identity. You created yours through that. Other people are given an identity just by default, by what they do. And they allow labels to be placed on them. I'm a IT consultant, whatever. And that's what we say to everybody that we meet. First question, what do you do? I'm an IT consultant. That's part of your identity. We get our money and our status and all that kind of stuff from these things related to our jobs and related to how we make money. And we have to, whether it's forced or whether we do it on purpose, like, these moments force us to dissociate from that identity and think about what we want it to be. And we have to rebuild it. And so in that moment, like, you did a lot of, that's what we call soul searching, basically, right? Like, you are building a new identity. And that's scary. Like you're letting go of something really familiar and something that you love, but for a bigger purpose, to say, I need to build the next chapter that encompasses all of this stuff. And this is like the crux of why this stuff is so damn difficult. It's because we are literally breaking down an identity and trying to build something new. And it's just a scary ass process. Riff off of that if you want. I kind of went on a soapbox there for a second.
Sure. No, it really is. And I experienced it. You're right on. I mean, can you imagine? I just go right now, hey, Mike, you're doing some amazing stuff. Quit, move the family to Helsinki and start teaching math.
Yeah.
You kind of say, wait, what? Right. And it's not planned. It's literally, we went on a vacation that turned into, oops, okay, we're here. Okay, now what? The one thing I knew and was good at, that's gone. And so for me, what happened, it was just really helpful that my wife and I, our faith's a real important thing to us, because it's these times where everything's shaking, right? Where it's like, think about it. I don't know how many, wives that watch this would be like, man, if I could just get to a point with my husband where we could live in the in-laws' basement, that would be so awesome, right? But we got to do that for 16 months. And that was like, leave a nice condo. We had 2 live-in maids. It's a garden community. There's a 50-meter lap pool. There's a full basketball court in a basement, a great weight room. We're in the midst of the newest part of the city. Life is good. We got the team perks. We got this and that. And then, hey, what floor? Remember Rodney Dangerfield? How come every time I get in the elevator, the guy always says basement? Right? Yeah. It's like, go down to the basement now. And that's kind of like what happened in our life. So that shift and what do you have left, it really makes you re-examine, okay, so who am I really? Because if it is your work, well, on your deathbed, nobody's going to go like,
right.
Oh, remember that business deal you made when you were 48? That was the most beautiful moment. Like, it's not that it's a bad thing, but that's not fundamentally who you are. It's something that you did. And so having to wrestle through that with that one thing that I did and that one thing that I really loved, it was challenging.
Yeah. And the second point I wanted to make in your story there is the faith component. I mean, whatever you want to call it, doesn't have to be religious. But I do believe that it is a spiritual thing to have faith either in yourself and build that, in some other power or in yourself. The idea that you can build this faith mechanism, this belief flywheel, I call it, like, just the confidence and ability for you to handle whatever's going to get thrown at you. Number one, I think you need a very strong foundation. Yours was a Christian faith, plus, you're a dynamic guy. You got some skills going on, even if you can't throw them on a resume, you got some skills. But having a really strong sort of foundation of who you are is really important. And then you have to have this outlook on life that I can't predict anything anyway. So all of life is adaptation. And if all of life is adaptation, I don't need to have 15, 16 steps of some process mapped out before I make a move. I need to have like 2 or 3 pretty good scenarios that I think I can go flex and maybe crossover dribble on quick to get to the next piece. And that's really all I need. And if I got that, I'm going to get through. And I think we overcomplicate. I'm not talking about people who get like really, have a really massively bad thing happen to them. Like, right. I'm talking about changing career or like pivoting what you feel like is most important in life and then going after it, designing your life to then take care of those things. Like, these are really hard choices, but we often make them even harder than they need to be because we don't believe in ourselves, or we don't, I heard you talking about applying for the jobs. Oh, I don't have that. I don't have that. I don't have that. And a lot of that is self-inflicted. And then look at, you got hired to be a CEO of a startup. Well, why? It wasn't because any of that shit on your resume. It was because you got some stuff going on.
Yeah. No, it's really helpful. And what I think is really important to this one, what was important to me, is relationship.
Yeah.
So people that you do life with, that you don't have to put your best foot forward. Like, Yeah, like real life. Like, you don't want to step out to people you don't know and always put your worst foot forward. I'm not saying that. We're always going to try to, just be normal and present how you present, but people who can actually know you and know what you're going through. And funniest thing, man, somebody who really helped me a lot via one specific phone call was somebody who wasn't ever a close friend until I was going through this. It was a girl I knew in college. Jen, and shout out to Procure Impact. What she does is they build this cool social media, social enterprise platform. But so she had been a basketball player at Cornell also, and she was younger. Never really spent much time talking. Knew who she was, knew who I was. Hey, how are you? She was, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 years younger than me. But I had seen, we had been friends on Facebook, and then she posted something about she'd done some work in Africa. She was always a leader. And then she came back. And so we just kind of connected through that. Like, oh, well, I'd love to hear your story, because faith was a part of her story. And so we spoke. And then I got to a point where I had shared with her the stuff about the resume, and I'm looking at myself and I'm like, I'm unqualified. And then she kind of in a good way kicked my butt, and she quoted this Bible verse in Philippians that says, whatever's true, whatever's praiseworthy, whatever's noble, dwell on these things. Essentially, I mean, I'm condensing it really quick for the sake of this illustration, but she said the first part is whatever is true. You're looking down on yourself. Let me tell you about who you actually are. And it was the kind of coaching I needed in that moment, because sometimes when you're going through stuff, it's easy to believe the worst about yourself, especially when you're on an island and you're looking inward. Like, introspection can get to be a pretty ugly process, because our tendency is to look at what's bad and wrong and ignore anything that's good. And so her calling me out on that was like, oh yeah, I need to start speaking a little bit more positively about myself. I'm like, what was that Jim Carrey movie, Liar, Liar? When the guy's, what are you doing? I'm kicking my own, right? I would just beat myself up all the time. So it was really helpful to have somebody say that to me and help call it out. And I'm like, all right, yeah, I got to snap out of this.
Yeah, it's the problem I have with how we go about job searching in general. And I'm not in this. I don't coach people to get jobs. I coach people to build self-directed lives. Like I'm not in that world. But if I was, I would be like, stop looking at job postings and start networking with hiring managers, because like people invest in lines, not dots. Like you need multiple touch points with human beings, so that you don't want to be the one to opt yourself out just based on some words on a piece of paper. Like that is what I think happens. And 75% of jobs get filled through some type of connection. So it's like, if you want to actually increase your odds and get rid of that, like opting out, self-defeating, mechanism that we all have in our own brains, like go make actual relationships instead of looking at, some lines on a piece of paper and saying, well, I'm not qualified. That's a horrible negative spiral of a way to find a job in an already like very vulnerable position. Like, so there's my soapbox on that.
Where were you in 2020, man? I could have used you talking to me.
I know.
So I want to throw this though, Mike, because I had another friend, Christopher Stevenson, who helped me with this, and his dad had been a career HR guy, and he was just, we sat down, we had coffee, and he gave me some directions and helped me with some stuff. But one of the things he said, because you got to remember, I had since high school never had to apply for a job.
Right.
I got offered a scholarship. Cornell said, transfer here and you got a spot on the team. You're good. So, okay, great. So I transferred. I got recruited to go play basketball in the Philippines. I got offered contracts. I was so spoiled.
Yeah.
I never had to put myself out there other than my work will speak for itself, and then we'll see what you guys offer. So I don't understand the job market. I don't understand the job market in the world. I don't understand the job market in the US. I don't know how hiring practice. I literally know nothing. And one of the things that Christopher said was, Alex, when we hire people, we do not try to find someone who fits and checks every box. That's not how this works. Well, that person doesn't exist. It's like a wish list for us.
Yeah.
And we try to get interviews and find somebody who can learn some of the things that we're looking for. He's like, your resume's great. You'll be good. Resume's great. What? Yelling at guys to play defense? Where's that? Like that's not a job listing. So, yeah, it was really helpful having some friends speak to me and coach me through this stuff.
So obviously an evolution, a process of who you want to be, what identity do you want to have? It was very family focused for you, obviously, but then going into this complete unknown, uncharted waters, did you have any type of system or process or checklist for trying to navigate what you would do? And I want to get this to what you're doing now, but like,
Sure.
But that's what I'm really interested in, because life is decision-making frameworks.
Yeah.
Life is, how do we go about making these really hairy, difficult decisions? And I'm just curious, like, I know from talking to you, like, you didn't want to be in basketball. You could have picked up the phone to a bunch of people that in the NBA, and you could have gotten a job there. But that would have been flying around the country, and that wasn't a line. That was a no-go. Despite all of the great things that would have come with that, that was a no-go, right? Like, so that's a decision gate. What else? What were there any other criteria of what you were going to try to do or be, or just curious?
So no, that's a great question. And part of that was the wrestle, especially that 2020 year. My folks live, it's a place called Arbor Hills. It's near the Arboretum. It's like a forest in the middle of the city, basically. And so I had some walks through the Arboretum in the neighborhood. Like, what do I do? Where do I go? What's going to even be open? How long will this thing last? And I was aware that I had to sort of really self-evaluate and try to do it in truth, right? Truth, which is, okay, the ugly's part of the truth, but it's not all ugly, right? Like, let's keep it real. I'm not going to be a finance guy. I don't know. Like, I got a friend who was an incredible trader and rainmaker. I got friends who've been in the markets. They do private equity and stuff. I don't understand any of that stuff. I'm not going to go there. I'm not going to start in my late 40s. I'm so far behind that. But I know that having parents who are teachers and always being put in positions that require communication skills and leadership and understanding people. I'm a human development and family studies major. It's basically developmental psych. Like, I was interested in people and teams, right? There's a great carryover between teams and leading teams, either as a point guard or as an assistant coach or as a coach, and organizations or groups of people. So I'm always interested in trying to find ways to bring people together for a common cause and work and understanding strengths and alignments and all that stuff. So I thought, okay, so things that would involve me speaking, teaching, leading. But you know how broad that is? I mean, there's like, oh, there's that one job that you can do with that. It's kind of, it's a vague, and I didn't have great clarity. So some of it was trial and error, but for my wife and I, a lot of it's going to be what we would hope is values-based decisions. And that doesn't mean like we're not like hyper religious. Like it's not about that. It's about, what do we value? What are our priorities?
Yes.
So how do we work from there?
Yes.
Right. And so those were things that would guide me. And then, as opportunities came or didn't come, it was just kind of figure it out. Trial and error.
It's trial and error. It's signal acquisition. That's how I always say, like, it's.
Can you explain that? What do you mean by signal acquisition?
Yeah. So I think in my view, you're spot on with starting with values. Your North Star, whatever it is, like, right. Purpose encompasses a lot of values. Like, that's your first gate, decision-making filter. So that'll give you a direction, basically. Like, I want to go into coaching people and understanding the world of how we change, how we build resilience and adaptability and all this stuff. That's like my direction, right? And then the next piece is, all right, well, there's 1,000 ways you could get there. 1,000 different roads, right? And so all I need to focus on is the action or activity that's going to give me the most signal as to should I continue on that path or stop and choose a different route. So that's what I mean. Like, if you think about all of the things and activities that you could do to fill up your time, and you start to think about, well, what has the highest odds of getting me the most information or best information, or the information that I need to have in order to make the next decision, then the decision of what you do in the moment becomes much more obvious, right? I could scroll social media. I could send a bunch of emails. I could learn about digital marketing. I could go take coding classes, crazy, right? That's crazy. But if you're like, I need to get into coaching adults in their career decisions, what is the absolute next action I should take to do? Like, your set of possible activities becomes less. And then you start to think about impact, that signal versus tuning out all the noise. And all you are in that is, you're like a dog on a scent, right? Like, you're just booming around. You're trying to pick up the scent. You're trying to acquire that signal. And you don't have to think about the other beautiful thing about that is it removes all of the doubt and the buts from your own mind about what you don't have, 10, 12, 15 steps down the road. Yeah, well, but I don't have this experience. But I don't have that. But I don't have, well, you don't need that right now, because all you have to focus on is right here. So that's what I kind of mean by signal acquisition. It's much more akin to, an exploration or finding your way in the woods than it is the logical, like, planning sequence that we've grown up in, at least in the West, from a business corporate perspective. It's like, oh, we're going to go do this thing. I want a Gantt chart. I want a flow chart. I want every single step mapped out. To me, that's just BS for what we need to do, which is to find ourselves. We need to go on a journey and an exploration, and we just need to figure out what's in front of us and continue to optimize that. Does that make sense?
It completely makes sense. And there's two things that sort of spring from that idea. And the first is my first job, working for a gentleman who I guess I just love and respect so much. But he would always say, he was one of the owners of the company. And I say, "Hey, Brent, how you doing?" He's like, "Oh, just trying to do the next right thing in front of me."
Yeah.
And I just love that phrase. I'm like, that's great, because I could go back to when I'm a single guy living in the Philippines, and or even prior to that, I'm in college. And I would have insomnia because I'd be trying to figure out the world and thinking about how I'm going to provide for my kids. I'm a junior in college. I don't even have a girlfriend. Yeah. Like, what am I worried about my kids' future? Like, I'm stressing out 40 years ahead. Like, relax, dude. Like, go have some fun. So thinking about that next right thing in front of you, I love that phrase. It's really in line with that. And then also for me, one of the things I've tried to work on in the past few years, I don't feel like I've been dominated by it, but I've seen some results play out in my life, and that is trying to not make decisions based out of fear. Wisdom and fear are different, right? There's practicalities in life that we all have to take care of, but wisdom and fear are different. And for us, it was sort of like how my wife and I told our kids that we wanted to approach COVID. They're 8, 6, and so after they were here, there was birthdays, so it was 8, 7, and 5 that first year. And you don't want kids in hyper fear. That's not good for them psychologically. So inevitably, everybody knew there's stuff going on. COVID, what's this? And we would just tell them, hey, we're not going to move in fear. We're not going to move in fear. We're going to be wise, right? We don't know what it is, but that's okay. We'll be fine. Everything's good. And I've wanted to make decisions based out of that. Sometimes the reality of life will smack you in the face and try to prompt you to make some decisions out of fear. But ultimately, if I can recognize that, what's going on inside of me, and am I trying to make a decision out of that emotion? Okay, stop. Step back for a second. Hit pause. Okay, let's try to be wise and not knee-jerk fear this decision. Where are we at? Where are we going? And those are a couple of things that I thought of from what you were sharing.
Yeah, that ability to just pause and separate between kind of stimulus and response is such a big overlooked skill, right? Because that's like, you're able to say, all right, right off the bat, I'm scared. Okay, what does that feel like? That's uncomfortable. All right, what if I back up and I can then look at it from like a heart-centered and head-centered way? What are the odds here? What do I really want? Put that in perspective a little bit and not make that knee-jerk decision. I mean, that is just a superpower that we coach a lot on that, and we can't let fear dictate our lives, because most of the time our fear is in our own heads anyway. So we need to remove that kind of stuff.
You're listening to the Break Podcast, powered by Career Cloud.
This episode is sponsored by ZipRecruiter. If you need a change and are looking for a new job, or if you're looking to hire for your small business, please check out ZipRecruiter today. Their smart technology matches the right candidates to the right jobs and sends new opportunities right to your inbox. They make finding a job or hiring the right person easier than ever. ZipRecruiter, the smarter way to hire. Try ZipRecruiter for free today by going to ZipRecruiter.com and tell them I sent you.
Going on to what you're doing now, I want you to lay out what you're doing today with work and with life, how things are integrated, and just how you're serving people now. Because in my opinion, it's a beautiful connection between your past, your future, and your present, and how you sort of have wrapped that all together to be your story. And you have this way of being your just authentically you in this business, bridging everything. And I want that story to come out, because that, I think, is the aim for all of us. Like, how do we do this together in an integrated way where we're living work creatively and life, and we're free to be kind of our authentic selves? So take it away. Tell us what you're doing today and who you're helping.
Sure. Thanks for the question, Mike. So it was interesting in trying to discover what that was, right? There's a few years in there of wrestling.
Of course.
And I have a couple I'm really close friends with. They live in Orlando. The guy's ex-Special Forces guy who married a good friend of mine from the Philippines. So she was the national marketing director for Levi's back when we were in our 20s, and she got me to be one of their endorsers back when I was a young man without the dad bod. And so I've known them since 2000. And Todd started flying over the Philippines to, I guess you could say, court, go after, date, whatever, Tino, however you want to use that word. And then so we've been close friends for almost a quarter of a century. And last year, Todd called me and said, "Hey, my neighbor needs some help. He's setting up a business. He's got a business deal that's growing, and he needs to hire some Filipinos, and he wants me to do it, but I can't because I have my own business. You're in between jobs. Dude, you speak the language. You're fluent. Like, I'll help you through this process, but you need to do it." So I said, "Okay, sure. I'm literally in between jobs, so sure, I'll do it." So I jumped on a plane, flew down to Orlando right away. And, like a lot of things, it was, I don't know what I'm doing, but I do love the Philippines. I love Filipinos. I just love the country and love the culture. And as a quick aside in there, it's really interesting. I feel so blessed to be an American, and I've been all over the world. So I really love this country. But I feel like I have two countries now after spending half of my life in the Philippines. And it's interesting. I'm so grateful for being an American, and I get a little extra choked up about the Philippines. I can't explain it, but there's a different level of like, it almost feels like calling or sentimentality or something about that country. Just love the country, love the people, know the vast amounts of excellence that are in that country. Why would Americans know about that unless they've had experience with Filipinos? How would they know the culture? In the same way that I don't know anything about Tanzanian people, I haven't had a chance to really interact with them. They might be the most amazing people in the world. I don't know. I don't have time to think about it. I'm busy doing other stuff. So, so he asked me to help set that up. So we set that up, and it was really both easy for me to connect with the Filipinos. I mean, my job had been coaching Filipinos or playing with Filipinos, and I was still playing. And it was fun because I'm not, it's not like I'm in a massive Filipino community in Madison. So it was kind of like connecting with a part of me, if you will, when we were setting that up. And then that was a shorter project. We set it up. That was great. Everybody was happy, and it was fun. And I moved on. I thought, well, I don't know that I want to do this as a business, but that was fun. And then I met with another friend, had coffee. It's sort of like how you and I did, just got together and had coffee. We were just chatting. And then he said, oh, wow, you guys are doing that, Alex? I think there's a need. I'm a part of this group of Fractionals United. This has a bunch of different people who could use some help. So we started a company with the idea of we want to connect American businesses with Filipino talent in a variety of levels. And that's, like I said, you don't know what you don't know. But our first client's a friend of mine who has a startup in Silicon Valley, and she needed a senior QA analyst and a senior level Next.js developer, software developer, anyways. And so I said, sure. We'll round up some people, tell me how many you want to interview. And we set up the interviews. And she literally said to me personally, she said, oh my gosh, Alex, I had no idea. Like if I had the funding right now, I'd hire all of them. I didn't know that there was this level of talent out there. I've done a lot of work in India. And so it was cool to be an advocate for a country I love and a people I love who, you can bridge the gap, and Filipinos will work. The ones that apply for these jobs will do the remote jobs overnight, but for them, they're going to have better pay and a good paying job, and they can have this great work experience, and we can be the bridge to connect them with American companies that need help, where they can save money and hire some Filipinos. And so it's a very, it's just very me. Like I said, being in the beginning of this, like, my one buddy said, "Oh, you're the white Asian dude, man." And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm the whitest Asian you're gonna meet, man." So being able to be both, have a foot on both sides of the Pacific, and it would be a joy for me to keep linking companies with the culture that I love and live in my house. So yeah.
So what is the name of the company? Tell us what the name.
It's called Valor Pro Global.
Valor Pro Global. And
so my buddy's at 100%. Sorry, go ahead.
And what is like the, ideal, I guess, client, that type of business, size business that you're looking to serve? Because, I know you and I have talked a lot about this idea of solopreneurship and small entrepreneurship and needing to outsource a lot of VA stuff. I work with a VA from the Philippines before I knew you. So give us what's the target kind of?
So we can help with anybody, essentially. We feel like our niche is going to be that higher level talent that a lot of Americans aren't aware of. So my friend who was the national marketing director for Levi's, she's brilliant. I mean, she's brilliant. She works for Rocket. She's up there in the food chain. She's brilliant. There's such a high level of both creativity and excellence. And as a populace, the Philippine demographics, the workforce is generally, as a rule, much more tech savvy than the US. It's just people are more immersed in different forms of tech and navigating through that. So we can go from anybody. If you needed a virtual assistant, sure, but we don't think that's our sweet spot, but we could easily help people with that. We have people right now who are virtual assistants, executive assistants, but also marketing level, like that mid-level position. If you can do it remotely, you'd be thrilled with the level of proficiency, coupled with, we always feel like we can drop your cost while upping your level of excellence. So if you want to go social media marketing to actual marketing manager, to software developers, to web developers, there's just bookkeeping, accountants, Salesforce admins, We have some exciting projects we're working on that. So yeah, it's more than anything, it's not hard. And this is the fun part for me is that's home.
Right.
I'm 22 years in the country. I've got connections and we have partners out there, our business partners. So it feels like being a fun conduit or bridge to this country and this really amazing labor force.
So if like if a solopreneur like me or a small business, person like me, digital tech, I'm a coach, that kind of stuff, came to you, and said, "Hey, I need a virtual assistant. May need to scale this to 5 at some point." Like, we're looking at, we do a lot of digital marketing promotion, Shopify stores, that type of thing.
Sure.
They just come to your website and apply. Like, how does it work?
Yeah, you just go right to our website. You can contact us. My email, and I hope you don't have like trillions of TikTok followers on this who will now blow me up with spam, but my email is really complicated. It's alex@valorproglobal.com. I mean, it's pretty tricky.
Yeah.
But yeah, you just contact us. And since we're a young company, I mean, we just started in March, but because I have connections on both sides of the Pacific, it's amazing how quickly we can say, how many people would you like? Do you want to interview anybody? Do you want us to essentially do all the interviewing? Do you want to have 5 people for one position you interview? Do you want 15? You tell me what your parameters are. We'll do all the culling. Do you want to get it? You want 2 candidates and I'll put 2 in front of you. You tell me, what do you need? We'll put it before you. Give us a few days and we'll have people right in front of you and then you determine. But we just need to know what it is are your needs and then we'll do all the searching for you.
Yeah, because some of the alternatives for, again, guys like me are like Upwork, which is a decent amount of back and forth. I ended up hiring my VA, Ryan, who I have a little bit of a story about in a second, but great guy. We worked together for like 3 or 4 years. He's from the Philippines, lives in the Philippines. I actually got a connection to him through another person because like other companies that we did back in the day, like we built out almost like gigantic customer relations call centers over in the Philippines. So like we've known about that, the type of talent in the Philippines for a really long time, but to have like you with a stable of people that you can just pick from and set some parameters with you, who then knows the language and the culture and all of that, and come back with like a couple of key recommendations very quickly, like that. I mean, that's a huge time saver and a huge just headache navigation, the process type thing. So that's really amazing. Like what's it like a time frame? Like what does a turnaround look like? Let's say I want to hire 3 people.
You would just need to tell me, do you want 10 candidates per position? Do you want to know the top 3? But we could probably have all of that in front of you in a week. And we would guess, and this is where we think the fun part of the business for the American side is, we'll probably save you around 40% of what you would pay to hire here. And we can up that work. But my edge, if you will, is the relationships with our Philippine partners that I have, and the fact that I'll be a part of the first few interviews to start as we're growing, because I want to make sure, because we feel like, and you know this, Mike, and I ran a startup. A lot of times you want to do so much and you're like, oh, if I could just have a person do this, and oh, I got to do this. And then it's like 11 at night and you're doing a bunch of stuff that you're really not proficient at, and you're tired and you're getting a little ornery. I know this from having run a startup. And that's actually the fun part of this story is I tried to hire our partner back in 2021 when I was a CEO of this company, because I knew I needed some extra admin help. And she had been an executive assistant for one of the best leaders I've ever been around for 14 years. And, big time EAs, they're kind of like co-CEOs. Like they could run they got it. And so I reached out to her. Hey, Trisha, are you doing anything? Can we do this? She said, oh no, I'm really sorry. This is crazy how this worked out. This reminds me of playing basketball in the Maxwell House Can in Thailand. So she says, no, I'm really sorry. I felt called to train Filipinos for remote work. So I've started my own company and I'm training them now so they can stay here in the Philippines and work from home and be with their families. And I was really bummed. I was seriously bummed out by it. And then it ended up being a pretty gosh darn good thing because now she's our partner. She's been a good friend for a while and she's got all these people that she's trained. But we feel like, being able to hire people like that is like, oh my gosh, I'm not thinking about the social media posts, which maybe might seem like nothing, but it's still time and thought and creativity where maybe you're not meeting somebody, you're not doing something else. You can just multiply. So, and part of that all started because my buddy ran his business this way. Yeah. So his Filipino wife told him he built a uniform business in a bloody market. They were saturated and he was struggling, but they succeeded when they started hiring Filipinos because he was able to get more stuff out. They had a broader sales force. They have more contact with people. So a lot of rambling there, but anyways, that's part of the background.
So do you guys take care of all the payment stuff too? Because I mean, obviously there's like exchange rate stuff. Like how does that all shake out?
So we'll set a fee. So we just basically say, if you wanted to hire, like I asked a friend who was looking to hire an executive assistant here. I'm looking out my window because the building's 3 minutes from my house. And he was the business director of this place. I'm like, so what would that position for you guys? What would that cost? He said, minimum 60 grand if you're throwing in FICA and benefits. I'm like, we can. I guarantee you the maximum we would charge you is 36, but we'll probably be able to do much better than that. And we'll take care of everything. Mm-hmm. And we'll take care of their benefits and stuff because, it's the Philippines, right? So it's a different setup. So we're like a outsourcing people, and then we have to go through our partner in the Philippines. Right. So we have a whole benefits thing set up through Trisha. She takes care of them. She takes care of the payment. It's just part of our agreement of having a partner on the ground there.
And are the Filipinos all essentially like 1099 US equivalent type thing, or do they have are there benefits packages that they get for? I don't know how any of that stuff works over there.
Great question, but it's benefits over there. So we have benefits over there. So Trisha, when I say we, it has to be distanced. Trisha takes care of it, but she's your
partner. So they have access to like health insurance and stuff through her?
Through Trisha.
Okay, got it. All right. Yeah, just curious as to how that worked. Interesting.
Which doesn't happen a lot for freelance people, right? If you're somebody who jumps on a Fiverr, you're just kind of flying solo. But that's one of the benefits of working for Trisha, who we connect with, and that's sort of the whole process.
And you can operate on like an hourly type basis arrangement with you, or how does? I mean, it would be some type of fee, but I'm assuming that gives you access to a certain amount of hours per person type thing.
Oh, sure. So, for example, our first client, at first, when she started, she said, I just need somebody for 8 hours a week right now for this position. Like, great. When do you want to talk to her? I'll get you a meeting in probably 3 to 5 days.
Got it.
And so we found some people and put them in front of her, and she goes, she's hired right away. And then she's been great, but that's been that rate. So it really depends on what do you need? What do you need? We can help you with part-time, full-time, whatever position.
That's amazing. I just love how through serendipity and just putting yourself out there in the world and what you want and who you are, you can attract the right situation. And I think you're just a really good example of that. And I mean, my story about, everybody, I have a VA, Ryan, from the Philippines, and I text him. I was like, hey, check out this guy. And I sent him I think it was your Wikipedia page. I'm like, hey, check out this guy. He's got this company connecting Filipino workforce to US companies. What do you think? And he goes, all caps, are you kidding me? Exclamation point, exclamation point. Alex Compton? And I'm like, yeah. He's like, I see him every day at baseball, his kid, and he coached my kid in basketball. What's the deal? He's like, I grew up watching him play basketball in the Philippines. And I thought that was just so freaking amazing because it's a testament to 2024. It's like we can be so close to each other and be worlds away.
Yeah.
And have these connections, and for you to be bridging these two worlds, and then, little old me just bopping around, just trying to do something right for my business. Like the kid I hired over there grew up idolizing you in the Philippines and is a huge basketball nut. I mean, it's just so much fun. And now I've been able to connect him with you for like more work and get him into that stable of people. It just feels so good to be able to just be like who we are and be authentic and have all these really cool things happen. So,
well, and Mike, I think this fits right in with what I've seen, the stuff that I've watched and through our discussions with what you're doing. There's also a couple other projects that I'm working on, but this was sort of the whole, and it feels like a thrust of yours or an emphasis or however you want to put that. But when I was trying to do things that aren't me, I wasn't really succeeding.
Yeah.
And so one of the things I'm working on we were going to send it in for editing, but we weren't quite happy with it yet, but is a book on guiding your child's athletic journey.
Yeah.
And that started because it's part of a series that one of my best friends in the world wrote this book, co-authored it, Wisest Learners for Parents, on about creating a holistic learning environment for your kid, what that looks like. It's just awesome. It's all based on research, and that was his. But then he asked me, hey, do you want to do one about guiding your kid's athletic journey? I'd be like, yeah, that'd be fun. And it's basically youth sports parenting. And so we're basing that on research, but that's very me, right? I mean, like you said,
totally.
I saw you at the basketball court and the baseball field, right? Like we're always shuttling our kids around, breaking here, there, watching games, trying to coach them, trying to not overcoach them, trying to not undercoach them.
Yeah.
And so that was fun. Another thing, I had another buddy the guy who called me the white Asian guy, asked me to be an advisor for a global fintech and to help them expand into Southeast Asia. And I'm like, I'm not a fit. I'm not a fit, but I have friends. If that's what you need, we can help. But it's all these things that like, finally I feel like, okay, so these are the areas that I should help move in, because they're me, right? Yeah. I can't do certain things, but these are fun.
Yeah. This is the concept, ladies and gentlemen, of the portfolio life. Like this is an example of the portfolio life. I talk about that, and I don't mean like, oh, you just have a whole bunch of multi-income streams and all this kind of diversified income streams and all that kind of stuff. It's about being able to put shots in the world based on who you are and just have a ton of freaking fun doing it. And then 1, 2, 3, not all, but 1 or 2 or 3 of these things are going to hit and you're good to go. Like it's instead of this linear thinking, I have to do one thing at a time and, build this brick, then that brick. Like you can do a bunch of different things. You can follow your interests and your curiosities. And that actually gives you higher odds of succeeding than trying to think through the whole plan with just your brain. When you let your heart and soul lead your direction, you're able to do this stuff and just have fun. I hope, Alex, when you finish that book, I want you to come back on and promote it so we can talk about the book and get it out there. And I'm going to buy one and I want an autographed copy for sure of that. I'm not going to put it on eBay, but that's what the portfolio life is about. It's about working hard. It's about having fun. It's about integrating who you are with what you do. That's what it is. And I think you're a great example of that. So I really appreciate you being here and sharing your story with us.
Yeah, well, thank you. And the last part of that is my buddy asked me to write a second one on coaching, and I just didn't feel comfortable because I said, I coached for 12 years, but I played longer, but I got the guy. And I have a friend of mine who coached for 40 plus years. His dad and John Wooden were friends and contemporaries, and he's been coached at one point in 10 countries in 10 years. He took New Zealand to the Olympics back in the early 2000s. He's incredible. So we meet every Thursday night over a Zoom and we discuss a book that he's writing where he's Batman and I'm not even Robin. I'm like Robin's kid in this. But it's just fun. It's fun because I'm talking to, he was the head coach of the national team when I was assistant. So I'm connecting with an old friend that I really respect and admire. He's the single best coach I've ever been around. And that's that, like, I enjoy it. And there's like, people will say higher frequency or whatever. I don't know what you call it. I'm having fun.
Yeah.
And I love speaking with Tab about this stuff. So for me, that stuff has been, it's been on the good side of being back. That first couple of years of being back, there are definitely some challenges.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. Alex, thank you so much for being here. I want you to just give our audience again the website one more time, and any other way that they can maybe connect with you or learn more about you, whether it's LinkedIn or anything else. Just give us the deets on how our audience can get in touch with you.
Sure. Great. So Alex Compton, my email is alex@valorproglobal.com. That's because the website is valorproglobal.com. And you can find me on LinkedIn. Yeah. And anything I could do to help. I mean, the bottom line is I know what it's like to run a small company. I've experienced. My buddy knows the same. So we just want to help. We just want to be a bridge that helps people on both sides of the Pacific. And that whole process that's something we enjoy.
Yeah. Well, that's great. We're going to have all those links in the show notes when we publish the episode. And I encourage everybody to connect with Alex, on LinkedIn. He's doing a lot more on there. Obviously, I'm on LinkedIn. So, tag us and shout us out if you get a chance. But yeah, I think there's a market for especially this growing, fracturing employee landscape where more people are becoming freelancers, solopreneurs, and they're looking for a little bit more, efficiency and leverage in their businesses. And I think that's a great potential market for you, just on the going almost B directly to C almost, and using the LinkedIn platform. So there is that, and I'm always there to help and help you in any way that I can on that side. But Alex, thank you so much for being here. This has just been a blast. Have an amazing weekend, and I will maybe see you in Reedsburg this weekend at our son's baseball tournament.
I think we got two of them, so we'll see you there for sure, Mike. Thanks, man. Really appreciate everything you're doing.